When the Paladins of Light slew Dracula, it rained blood for 7 days and 7 nights. The gore-stained land ran red and black, humid with corruption and heavy with the truth that would soak into the earth itself. These rains would bring with them a lesson that would define the lands of Vardaron. Power, evil, it cannot be undone. The final vengeance of the Vampire Emperor drenched the wilderness, the streets, and the battlefields alike. The toxic rains, greasy and vile with dark magic, brought many to their end from raw exposure. Those that survived the onslaught were unknowingly both gifted and twisted, a curse that would warp their bloodlines forever. The story of V Rising is one that's nestled in mystery and destruction. On May 5th, 2021, Stunlock Studios released the V Rising reveal trailer that showcases the history behind this upcoming survival game. The narration talks of how vampires once ruled the land, but the humans had risen up against them and overthrown them with the power of light. Centuries later, hidden away in darkness, tortured by their thirst, the vampires have finally awakened, and they are angry. But the trailer doesn't quite dive deep enough into how far the story goes. On August 19th, they posted their 5th developer blog called The Fall of the Dark Empire. The world was once a place of order. There was a way of things, a cycle. The men and women of the realms of humankind went about their ways, learning, trading, building their great kingdoms and tall castles. And in those shadows lived the other half of the cycle, the vampire. In exchange for illusions of independence and unwitting protection from many predators of the night, the vampires fed on mankind's wealth and blood, living in delicate, decadent harmony with them. But no such balance can last forever. There's always ambition. And what is more natural to vampires than hunger? The truth lives on in the memories of every vampire that remembers the Great War. The creatures that reach beyond the familiar bounds of blood magic past our material realm into untouched worlds. The man who shattered this order and brought chaos is Dracula. Dracula was a pioneer, the first to pierce the planes and unify with mysterious powers that inhabit those other worlds. A dark throne was manifested in Dracula's castle, a conduit between the planes. But the other clans would not submit so easily, and so came the Great War. Wielding blade, bow, and blood magic, they fought to wrest control from Dracula's newfound power. They expended every last resource they had in a savage resistance to his control, their lust for power causing them to sacrifice everything in its pursuit. As a result, the cities of humankind were decimated in the struggle. They were drowned in a river of blood, and as such, Dracula had become unstoppable, or so they thought. In a pure and desperate attempt, the humans were able to rally together and humble themselves before all creation. They begged to anyone that might save them from their impending extinction, and something answered. At the edge of their hope, humankind was blessed with the power of holy light, and what few could wield it formed the vanguard of humanity, the Church of Luminance. Their order gathered under the united banner of the Paladins of Light, riding forth and casting the light into those long shadows to illuminate the dark. The surge of light had obliterated Dracula and scattered the vampiric legions. They pushed back the great clans and sent them into a full-blown retreat. Now it was the vampires who knew desperation and called out to the last of their power to form a dark barrier for protection during their last stand. The barrier did leave them alive, but they were trapped in seclusion and cut off from their source of food and power. In their time of need, just as their bodies began to fail them and they fall into a dreamless sleep, they called out to the void that once aided Dracula, in the hopes that it could save them, but no one answered. As they slept, the world continued without the vampires, and just like any world, this peace would not last without the introduction of new problems, the enemy within. The Church of Luminance and the power they acquired would not fade as this peace went on. As it is with all power, it craved to be wielded, and without an enemy to turn it upon, they would instead turn it upon themselves, and with it, they would wring their subjects of wealth and worth. Dracula's throne was one of otherworldly power, but the Church would forge their own throne of greed in his absence. Centuries would turn over one another, rolling onward. Hundreds of years of overgrowth would go on to swallow the last remnants of vampire civilization. Their tombs were forgotten to the wilderness along with their legends. The Dark Barrier would come to fade with time, opening these forgotten lands to human exploration. And there in the dark where the vampires slumber, a dark herald's cry rings out from the depths of the abyss. It reaches into the mortal world and brings with it an answer to that now ancient plea for help. With the distant call of this unseen benefactor, the vampires begin to stir once more, awakening from their centuries-long slumber to a world that has all but forgotten them. They are withered and weakened, thirsty and cunning, dangerous and furious. They will build, they will hunt, they will rise. Thank you for watching.